Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, Professor Pixel. We are continuing our James Bond sequential ordering of the movies and reviewing them scene by scene. Tonight's one of the best ones, in my opinion, of the entire franchise. I believe it is Professor Pixel's. It's On Her Majesty's Secret Service, starring Diana Rigg and George Lazenby, the one-off from them, too. So, Pixel, you're the young 20-something millennial in here trying to go through the entire Bond catalog with me, the older 80s guy. I guess the third state for my initial impression, when I was younger and saw this, I thought the kid in here, meaning the Bond guy, George Lazenby, was that. He acted a little gleeful. He acted like a young 20-something, like your age, too. Like he was really happy to play Bond and he couldn't believe he was doing it. But that being said, this movie holds up because I think the story-wise, it's very good. The score is incredible. Diana Rigg is awesome. There's a lot of things I think are great about this. And this one gets a lot of hate. It gets a lot of love. But I still think out of all the James Bond films, it's one of the best. And I can't wait to dive in. What's your initial impression?
Yeah, no, I think it's one of the best too. From what I remember, because this is my second time going through. The other time was a few years ago, so this is fresh in my mind. But one thing that I did remember is that I loved this movie. George Lazenby, as he's called. I remember seeing a documentary on James Bond a few years ago. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was one of those nights, you have the TV on and you're scrolling for something, and that came up. And so I was busy doing dishes and stuff, but eventually I had to stop and pay attention because it demanded it.
Right.
And hearing the story of George Lazenby and how he got the role of Bond, basically sneaking his way into it, it was just genius.
A brass set of balls.
Yes, he certainly did have some. Can't remember exactly why it didn't work out. I guess the studio didn't care for him too much. But I am glad that he did this movie. But I guess we should go ahead and get started if you'd like to take us away.
Well, let me just say this. I'll let you open up the first scene. But as far as Lazenby goes, we'll talk a little bit about him as the episode goes on and kind of compare him to what we've come up to so far, because we've talked about with the Sean Connery films that there's elements about him that we like, and here we have somebody different playing him. And so it'll be interesting to compare and contrast. And I don't think that everyone's going to probably say that Connery's better, but I don't know that you can take one. You have to talk about what's good and what's bad. And that sounds like a cop out, but there's definitely comparisons to be made for it. And to me, I'll simply say and add to it is it's a very lush looking film here. And to kind of start off, we get an opening sequence that's got his boss and Q talking, and Q's talking about miniaturization and radioactive lint, for lack of a better term, on how to track people. And it's just a way to sit there and say, well, where the hell's Bond? And we get the universal export sign, which I always thought was kind of classy. I always wanted that on the door here in the Pine Hills Palace or whatever. And then one day that'll happen. It'll be in silver. But I always thought the boss was just the heavy that was able to really put Bond in his place. And I've always felt that in their scenes. And by now we all kind of are familiar with the template of what happens here. But with Bond, we get a beautiful little scene here after we see Moneypenny for a split second of him driving around at night. It appears, looks like a blue filter to me. We don't see his face. So we see it from the back, and he's driving around in some sports car convertible behind him, honking and blaring. And it turns out that that's, of course, going to be this beautiful woman we're about to meet. And she flies ahead of him. And after a little bit, he sees the car pulled off on the side, and he pulls up next to it. And it's a neat little scene because you get to see stuff that's part of Bond's character without explanation. He opens up the glove compartment, and from there he takes out the little scope that he has for his gun, and he just holds it up to check her out. And he sees her walking into the water, and then he pulls right up onto the sand because it looks like she's going to take her own life, which is very dark. And as a kid, I was like, okay, is she just drunk? Is she just whatever? I mean, when I say a kid, I mean like 8, 9, 10 years old. I didn't really think about it. So it's one of the first times I saw what we might describe as a very dark act on film. And I didn't realize that here it is in a James Bond film with a guy I didn't even know, because he wasn't the Bond that I had known growing up watching. So that really kind of threw me for a loop. But then he goes and he pulls her out. We have this extended action scene. So I'll pause right here and let you catch up.
Yeah, no, it's genius. I didn't even think about it the first time, but they were hiding Bond on purpose because, well, he looks a little different. But as he sees her, as he sees the beautiful, beautiful Diana Rigg, he quickly gets down there and tries to help her out. And she's fighting him real quickly. And he carriers the land, just sets her down and lightly slaps her to stir. You know, she fainted. He introduces himself before there are two men that have come after him. The fight's pretty good. I enjoy it, at least.
What do you think about them speeding up the action? Because this editing is what makes this film different.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that as much. I really could have done without it. But it wasn't, at this point at least, enough to take me out of it. Okay. The girl is quickly seeming to be taken, but as Bond is put into a boat. But there is a fight. Guy gets a hook, gets it on. The girl is able to be dropped. And so she quickly takes off as the guys are trying to handle Bond. Bond gets the one guy stuck in the boat. Just because he keeps there. The girl is in the car as he manages to fight off the other. And she stops because she took Bond's car. She stops, gets out, and runs into his car. And that's when Bond is left carrying her shoes as he's trying to make a dash towards the vehicles. And he just stops and sighs and says, "This never happened to the other fellow." And that is our opening gambit.
Yeah, I wrote down here, and this is definitely not PC, so trigger warning ahead. George Floyd's the one guy because he sticks his knee on the dude's neck and drowns him. And then the other guy, he F5s him, for you wrestling fans out there too. And it's interesting because I guess this is supposed to be real late at night, early in the morning, like dusk, because as you see her running off, it seems very bright. So I don't know if that's intentional. That's what it looks. And it's beautiful the way it's shot where they're at on this beach. And I like it a lot, but I believe it's the opposite. She took his car, then runs into hers and then takes off. So he's stuck, in the Cinderella manner, holding her slippers going, "Oh, I'm going to have to return these one day." I thought that was kind of symbolic, as well as carrying her out of the water, like when you carry your wife across the threshold. Some people do that. I guess some people don't. But obviously, based on what happens in this movie, I thought that was kind of interesting when we first see them together physically. It's him carrying her out of the water, like bringing her back to life. And we'll talk more about the ending, of course, at the end, because that's what this movie's known for. But yeah, I was struck because the editing, he's very athletic. And he has that animal kind of grace to him that says he's got a great body sense to him, like he was an athlete. And Sean Connery had that as well, at least a little bit. Sean Connery was a weightlifter, bodybuilder, if you want to call it that. A slight differences for the weightlifting dorks out there that want to call me on it, but we all know the difference necessarily. And to me, it was a good opening. I don't necessarily like the tongue-in-cheek humor to it, especially after he just drowns the guy in the water. But I love how it's shot against the ocean coming in, and that's it. That's just great to me, and the sounds of it, everything. It's a wonderful opening. And then we get the opening title sequence, which really doesn't have a theme song. That being said, it's just musical, but what's neat about it to me is not the shadows of the women in there that we're getting accustomed to. I like how they actually have, with some of the cutouts and inserts as the theme is playing, shots of, like, say, the bosses and the women in the previous Bond films too. So they're letting you know that they're still thinking about the other films. And I think that adds a lot of continuity to the fact that, hey, we're going out on a limb here, putting a new Bond in here too. I enjoyed it. I think it worked well. It's not one of my favorites when we look at the series, or just for our intents and purposes, what we've done up to now, up to this film.
Yeah.
But it's not awful or anything. And it's something we'll obviously talk about a lot more. What'd you
I
think of the
mean,
opening?
how are you going to make a song out of On Her Majesty's Secret Service? Usually the songs connect to the title. You can't connect to that title really. But the song that comes up a little later, that is good. But we quickly return after the kind of lackluster intro, in my opinion, to Bond. And he's entering the... For some reason, I wrote it as Palacio, I guess.
Palacio.
Palacio. And he asks at the front desk, like, about the red car as he's led to his room. He takes a look out over the pool and sees girls laughing. And it quickly like fades into the night with the
Great shot
casino.
right here. Yes.
Yeah.
This
With
says casino in the letters on the water. That's
the
cool.
reflection. It's great.
Yeah.
There's some gambling going around, and so Bond goes to a table. There's a little bit of a game, and then we see Diana Rigg. She is there once again, and she tries her hand at it, and it doesn't go over well. So she looks to the guy next to her and says, "I don't have any money," basically. And so Bond covers the charge. Tracy, as we learn as they go to their own table, sorry, my apologies. She goes to her own table, and soon Bond goes over, and obviously she recognizes Bond. He orders a dom and caviar to her room, and later he goes ahead and makes his way there. But there's men waiting. It seems to be a trap. Another fight scene. It's rather quick. Chairs handing. They trash the room a bit, but Bond in the day finishes the fight and he heads out, but not without having some of the caviar they ordered. But I'm pretty sure he goes back to his room and he gets a little more comfortable, and then we see Diana there, and she has a gun out. So he looks in the mirror and he turns to see her, and he quickly gets the gun out of her hand and wants some answers. She's told quickly to get dressed after she really doesn't have any answers. And the night would seem like it's ruined as there's a man approaching the hall listening as Bond talks to her by the bedside, wanting to know her trouble. And she says to think of her, only her, as bought before taking a kiss. And we skip to the morning, so the night was not as ruined as I had thought.
Yeah, a lot going on here, but it's done very well. I think when you see Bond as he's getting into his room, of course he's getting this beautiful suite. Again, this is a very lush-looking film. I've got the 4K that I've been looking at, and I'm stunned by how colorful and vibrant it is. And I was like, wow, this looks great. Doesn't look hardly dated at all. Love it a lot. I've always said the set pieces in Bond, some of them just stand out really well, and this is one of them too. Because when he's walking in, he's a tall, athletic guy, a bit of a different skin complexion than Connery, but he's wearing a very light pink dress shirt on top. It was part of the suit ensemble, which is very light, almost oyster color, which is a bit different than what you saw with Connery's style. And I thought, well, it's very European looking and color wise, but it works for him. And that's one thing that as Bond goes on, you cannot avoid talking about fashion of Bond, because he's a guy living the ultimate lifestyle when you've got all these fancy casinos he's in. And off the top of my head, I don't know if they're in Monte Carlo, the south of France, somewhere Nice, perhaps. I don't recall. I've been to the south of France. I've been to Monte Carlo and a few places down there. It's some of the most beautiful places and cleanest areas. And there's just nothing but wealth everywhere. It's incredible. So to see Bond in a smoke-filled room like this playing Baccarat, and when she comes out, she is absolutely stunning, incredible, gorgeous. Just a wonderfully attractive, beautiful babe too. And I keep thinking too, you know what? The whole suicidal thing is just kind of heavy to me. So they meet and they talk a little bit, and the whole idea of having countess in your name means you're coming from money and status, and that's supposed to be like as high collar as you can get, whether you're a spoiled brat because you are going to inherit money. I struggled with deciding whether or not she was that way when I was young. And as an adult right now, I feel she carries herself very well and proper. But the whole thing with Bond rescuing her again, it's like, okay, what are you getting yourself into? But we know Bond's not normal either. So in a way, we kind of see how they are made for each other too. And he doesn't, I think, at least so far, talk down to her or treat her like, Pussy Galore or some other one that's just there for the getting some wood laid down. But yeah, the fight is got the sped up thing going on. I've talked about how I didn't like how it looked in particularly Goldfinger, but here I kind of like it. It just feels a bit more physical and intimate. It's it's kind of crazy that he gets all this, but it's the editing that always throws me off. I'm like, yeah, this is the film where it just is really, really different. They up the action to fit in for this character. Again, a good choice. Now, Connery could handle it, and he did it, but this is just a different level of physicality. Not better, not worse, just different. And I did like it. But again, some of the goofy stuff I don't like him doing the caviar at the end. And I'm like, well, okay, it is whatever. But yeah, I don't know what to make
I'm,
of it.
I'm just going to go ahead and say that I was very engaged. Like, obviously, I enjoyed the previous movie, but I was kind of heightened because you see this new guy step in, and he is virtually a nobody. Especially then, he was nobody, and he just walks on. And I wouldn't say, from my perspective, the guy doesn't look like one of the most prime examples of man known.
He's a male model.
Yeah, I find that a little
He's got
hard
a
to
great
believe.
physique, and he doesn't move effeminately or swishy or
Well, I
non-masculine
mean,
at all.
mostly
I
in
would
the
disagree.
face. Mostly in the face. I don't see that, but the way he's able to carry himself through the entire scene, I absolutely feel it. I feel that
Okay,
presence.
gotcha.
He carries himself with exactly what you need to be Bond.
Yeah, he's got balls. He's a man. He's even though he's got this boyish grin on his face, that's the thing about it too that I think, people might say, well, he's got a nice physique and all that. We see it when he wakes up the next morning with his shirt off and she's not there. And he's putting the robe on, but it's that's the whole thing. We think of Bond as a man, confident, capable in doing what he has to deal with because his life's on the line when he puts himself in these situations. So he lives hard, he plays hard, but with Connery, we always like the blend of the physicality and the masculine nature with a little bit of class. This guy's got a bit more of the I can't believe I'm doing this sort of thing. Um, although we'll talk more about him too, but yeah, I think that adds to what he is as a character. But if you compare it and say, well, it's because it's not like he was with Connery, it takes away. I don't know. I thought it was interesting though that when she's left in the morning and he goes to get up, that he opens up the drawer and the money's in there, the 20,000 francs that supposedly she didn't have. So she basically kind of played a little dangerously too. And this is where when he wakes up the next morning and goes to leave, he's going to go play some golf or wherever the thugs get him. And it looks like the guy that had assaulted him the night before is part of them too. So he's got no idea what's going on. He's being taken into the countryside and by gunpoint, of course. And he's being drawn into a room with how do we say this? A person that is a key figure in this film, dressed very well. He's even got the cigarette in the cigarette holder. Bond throws the knife past him, and he just wants to sit down and have a talk with Bond. This is a very pivotal scene, and as a young kid watching this, I really didn't understand what the hell was going on at all. But it's the key thing because it's was it her father?
Yep.
And,
Draco of Draco Construction.
and he's basically saying, he basically makes Bond a deal. Hey, you're a man. My daughter needs a man. I want you to do that. And it's like, what? And I'm like, wow, people really deal about all that. And it's one thing to sit there and say when you're younger, you're a father, you want your daughter to be with what you think will be a good provider, as opposed to what people may think of today when it talks about getting married. But the old ways of marrying your daughter off into polite society, as it were, I think this is a very telling scene because this is about it. And let's think about it. We're about 20, 30 minutes into this film, about a 2-hour film.
Mhm.
We don't have a super evil bad guy bent on destruction yet when it comes to whatever. We're just visiting Bond and the person that's going to be a very important figure in Trace in here too. But he's basically bribing Bond, who's going to pay him a lot of money to marry it, but he doesn't want to do it, but he wants to find Blofeld. And so he does deal on his own terms with it. And so they come to what for lack of a better term would be a business arrangement. And it's interesting. They let the scene develop with him discussing about what's happening and the background to it. And the guy's not coming across as an asshole or anything. And it's probably crude by today's standards, but it's two men having a conversation. It's a great scene. It's not something you'd find probably really in any other Bond movie. What was your take on this whole interaction? It's key to the whole movie.
I mean, yeah, it is. And I was a little thrown off because Draco of Draco Construction, you're not exactly sure what to make of him until he's saying, hey, my daughter needs to settle down. Her husband died, so you're going to step up. I think you can do this, Mr. Bond. And he tries to pay Bond to marry her, basically, and Bond kind of pushes it. But like we said, wants to know about Blofeld. He says that he'll not tell the agent, Draco. He says he won't tell the agent, James Bond, what he knows about Blofeld. But a son-in-law, yes. Well, perhaps. And overall, I was just engaged throughout it. I was down for this. And Draco, he pops in through the film, and honestly, thinking about it, it's not that much. Right. But his presence there is enough to make him memorable. But from there, quickly, we cut to Bond going back to the office. He tries for drinks. He tries for drinks with Moneypenny, but she says she couldn't trust herself around him before he goes in. And M quickly says that he's being taken off the case. And Bond nods his head and goes out back to Moneypenny and says, all right, Moneypenny, I want you to start writing this down. This is my resignation. And then he goes to his office to pack up, and soon there's a call. Okay, and he's thinking he's about to get his way. The call's there, and M wants him, and his is granted. He looks kind of hurt. He's like, what? And he's quickly handed back a piece of paper, and he's told, look at it. And it's not a resignation. It's not acceptance of his resignation. It's a 2-week leave. And we go from there quickly to, if you don't mind me continuing, unless you want to catch up.
Yeah, just a real quick pause here, because I think there's a lot actually to unpack, even though this happens really quick. I just wanted to make a comment that when they're in the office talking about, I would tell my future son-in-law, perhaps, in Draco's office, there were, you get this backdrop of this giant, I don't know if fresco is the right word, but the wall's got this wonderful painting on it too. It's really beautiful to watch what's going on in the background as you're listening to these gentlemen have a conversation. But yeah, it's Bond's boss isn't, dealing with any nonsense, and he does seem hurt by it. And I think that's one of the big differences between Connery's Bond and Lazenby's Bond here. Is Connery would feel the bite, but he'd find a way to smartly, politically, almost cynically make a comment about it or deal with it. Whereas here, he's acting like a hurt little boy in a way too. And the whole interaction with him and Moneypenny right before he went in the office, I thought was good, because it does the hat thing without even looking at it. Gives her a kiss on the cheek and a little squeeze on the bum, and it's like, ooh, this is probably about as far as Moneypenny's ever going to get, at least so far. And I thought, wow, they really changed their interaction. They had one like they typically do, but they even changed this a little bit. So I thought that stood out as well. But yeah, the whole 2 week thing off, obviously we know where that's going to play into. No big bad whatever. Again, half hour into the film, and it's just about the characters and Bond being set up. They're taking their time here with doing it, and they're focusing on that on the story. And I think that's just a really, really good thing too. What is neat though is when he goes into the next office, he's going through and rummaging around some items, and they're all items and stuff from the previous movie.
movies. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just kind of like a nod to the opening title sequence where we saw photos and stuff there too. I did like that. But yeah, you wanted to pick up on that?
Yes, picking it up where we left off, where we see Tracy. We go back to her, and she is going to see a bullfight. Her father is there and leads his daughter to Bond, James Bond. And she's not as pleased as he is to see her. Tracy is curious about her father's meddling and asks, I can't remember her name, but basically Draco's assistant. And then they all quickly sit. And Tracy quickly makes it clear that she does not like this. She doesn't like being everything being meddled into her life, and makes him tell Bond the information that he's bartering with. And quickly she runs off after Draco says Blofeld might be connected to a certain lawyer. And Bond quickly, after the information is given, gets up and chases after Tracy. She's there. She's crying. He goes up and he slowly wipes her tears. And soon we flash through scenes of them together, various outfits that I wish I could have gotten clearer pictures of, because they would have all made it in the thumbnail. This woman deserves it all the space. That's why she's the only woman there. As we hear All the Time in the World start to play. I do love this song, and I understand why it wasn't in that title sequence. It wouldn't have fit very well. But I do really love this song. And finally, I'll finish up this last little bit here, and then you can catch up. Finally, she and Bond are traveling with Draco in a car, and Bond explains he has a quick appointment, but he'll catch up. He heads in, takes this lift up, as we see this man also approaching the lift. And he's going down and says to the person at the front desk, I'll be back in an hour. Bond, of course, gets into his office. But the person we saw going down looks like he might have forgotten something. And we see as Bond is looking down from a window and seeing a case be lifted up in this bin and moved towards Bond. He gets it out and starts breaking into the safe as he, once the machine is set and doing it automatically, he sits down and starts relaxing. And you can cut in here if you want.
Well, yeah, the whole courtship scene here, that they don't rush or anything, and I mean it feels rushed because you go, well, Bond's getting involved with the woman, what's going on? And like I say, the old ways of marrying off into different classes and all that too being handled here. Yes, it's a bit of a business thing, but the thing that still gets me is this, Tracy is a troubled child, and she's got some emotional instability, and she'd be thought of as a little Lulu and crazy, not by today's standards certainly, despite what she attempted at the beginning of the movie. But I look at this and go, well, they do have chemistry together. I don't know how much of that's them as actors or how good Diana is, because he's green, he's wet behind the ears. But the one thing I will point out with the whole courtship thing is when he does say, hey, friends should be able to make amends, or lovers, if you will, when she's crying at the car and all that, and then the music's playing and goes into it. I have a really tough time picturing Sean Connery doing it. And I'm not saying he couldn't do it, but the way he was built up as Bond, he was never going to be put in that situation for the most part. And so each of the bonds you can tailor to what kind of scenes that you want to have in. And so despite Lazenby having a little bit of this boyish sort of charm to him, even though he's every bit as athletic and physical as Connery, maybe not quite as refined in that sense. I think his sensitivity, for lack of a better description, is what sets him apart from other Bonds, because he's so totally believable in his ability to portray Bond that this would actually be legit, and he's not just working her over, for info. Yes, he is, but yes, he also still cares about her and likes her. He's intrigued by her. She's a very beautiful woman, obviously very smart, intelligent. She really basically kind of seduced him. If you think about it, it wasn't like they just had a one night stand or whatever. She's different, and for Bond, that different works. So to me, I looked at that and went, wow, that's kind of believable in a way. It makes sense for what the movie's trying to set up. So I do like that. Yeah. The whole breaking into the safe sort of thing here too is, I'm like, okay, it's what the hell's the plot of this movie and where are we going? And it's like, I don't know. Back then, because of technology, you had to spend a bit more time showing numbers on dials and flashing. Now it's just, you press a button on the cell phone, everything seems to work. But he's breaking in to get the information, which is, a spy thing. And my gosh, I think it's the first spy thing that we see Bond doing, right?
Yeah.
But he's finding information, excuse me, about Blofeld, which obviously means we're going to get Blofeld in this film. So even though he gets the information and he goes to leave the building, the fact that he takes like a Playboy out or whatever, a pinup magazine, and he's checking out and you can see it, I'm like, okay, I get it. You're a bit of a pussy hound, but he's not looking at it like he's slobbering. He's just looking like, oh, this is kind of cute. Because even after he had slept with Tracy when he's leaving, when the henchman picked him up, when he's got the golf clubs, he's kind of turning and watching the ladies walk past him or whatever too. I'm like, yeah, okay, he's all of us at like 25 years old, no matter how good you think you've got it and with whom you're still got that wandering eye a little bit. But this is when the plot starts to take off, when he ends up going back and he meets his boss, M. So not much here other than this ensemble starting to level up here, and he's got some great stuff. Go ahead.
I'm going to actually go to cut it a little bit, because there are scenes breaking in between his breaking into the safe, and it's between Draco and Tracy, and he's saying to her basically that he knows what's best for her, and says that you need to be careful and stuff like this, and she says that she knows what she wants, to leave her and Bond be, and whatever happens, and I believe that he agrees. And as Bond gets the safe open, goes through the papers, makes all the copies, and the man's returning. Time's running out, but Bond gets the machine back in the thing, and he gets away with it. And quickly we go to an estate. Bond is there, and we see M, butterfly collector. Did you know this? I didn't know this.
I remember seeing it, but that could be something from the books and the novels. To be honest, it's been forever since I've read any of them, so I don't know. But I wouldn't call him a pansy because he likes to collect butterflies. By no means. M brings it.
No, I just small side story. I went recently to a restaurant. It was all jungle themed and stuff, in Disney, and there was this one room, and they had this one table, and he was surrounded by these butterflies, like a butterfly collection, and they are very beautiful to look at, honestly, and I cannot blame him for his collection. But Bond quickly shows the letters, and on to Blofeld if he can. But first, we go to a man named Hillary. We see Hillary. What's the term? Do you remember?
What do you mean?
He works.
Genealogist?
Yes. And shows Bond his family emblem, and it says his motto, as it were, is "The world is not enough."
Yeah, that I popped hard for that because I didn't realize that as a kid, but that's I can't wait to talk about that one. But yeah, the world is not enough. Awesome. That was good.
Yes. So it's quickly established that Hillary is set to be invited to meet the Blochamps to see if he is able to get into his family, as it were, to try and prove it. But Bond will be taking Hillary's place. And he's learning some of his mannerisms, so stuff like that, trying to study him a little bit and everything that he needs to know to get away with it before he is eventually on to Switzerland. And you can go ahead and take us away from here.
Yeah, it's when I think about this movie, it almost feels like it's a little dreamy, a little trance-like. It's very subdued in a sense based on what we're used to. And I always preferred more of the spy element to these movies rather than the action. That's just me. I do like the occasional action scene and creativity that can be involved, but I don't mind this at all. We're about almost an hour into the film with very little action, a few fight scenes, but nothing over the top, nothing gratuitous. And so, honestly, I'm not going to lie. I don't care about all the specific details other than, okay, I guess Blofeld's big thing isn't world domination. It's he wants a friggin' title because of his ego, and Bond's going undercover. And again, I give him credit for doing this because I don't know if he's that convincing as Bond going undercover for it. Of course, we see people watching Bond as he gets off there, but the fact that they filmed it obviously on location, everything is just incredible. And just looks beautiful, the backdrops and everything when they get off the train and all that. It's, again, very beautiful film. We talk about one of the beautiful things about Bond is going to all these locations around the world. As a young kid, if you didn't travel, the only way you saw the world was basically in movies, and a lot of time it wasn't where you were globetrotting. And that's one of the things I feel that Bond doesn't get enough credit for, is introducing somebody to these epic vistas and these beautiful outdoor locations and key scenes that before even really being able to tape a lot of them or using your cell phone and all that too. It's just incredible. And of course, this is what, late 60s, early 70s time frame we're talking about here, let's say 50 plus years ago. To see all this and all its glory, it's just really neat. And to see all that snow and them walking into the cabin, I'm like, okay, this is great. We go from south of France or Portugal or wherever they were at to a totally different alien location, relatively speaking, in 20 minutes on film. It's awesome. I love it. But yeah, he's going undercover and he's going to go see the client, which of course is Blofeld, at this allergy institute up in the Swiss Alps. And of course, they have the shot of them in the helicopter going up to it. And I tell you, this really captures the Alps very well to me, because a lot of it's looking down on him as he's flying over, and it's so simple, it's so basic, and him wearing glasses and a hat, seeing all the skiers, you feel like you're there. I love it. I think it's great, and I love this institute's in the middle of nowhere, and I don't know if we're going to call this the secret underground layer, because it kind of is, but it's better than the stupid volcano that we had and some other dumb stuff. But yeah,
I wouldn't say secret underground layer as much
you
as
know what I
the
mean.
institute is set on top. Yes, and I love when they arrive and when they hit the ground, he says, and Irma Bunce is there just saying, "Not ground, ice." But Bond, the way he's carrying himself through all this, he's putting on a voice. He's dressed differently, saying how guns make him nervous and how how he's not a sporting man, feeling the air sickness. He's kind of whiny, but that's
He is, but it's
great.
not believable. Is the whole thing, and again, we know he's supposed to be acting undercover, but it's just so not believable. And I don't know if that's his acting ability, or if that's the direction he was given. I'm not sure, because yeah, he may be dressed like a dork or whatever like that, but he's got broad shoulders. He looks masculine. You can't just necessarily throw that away when you put on glasses and change your voice. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I see what you mean, but at the same time,
He seems like he's popping himself. You know, he's still got that shit-eating grin on his face, and I'm like, get rid of that already, and I could believe you more.
yeah, I guess I could see that. But once they arrive, Irma.
By the way, I like it too. God, I'm horrible. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Irma makes a call to Beauchamp, Blofeld, as it were, and quickly they get Bond to his room. He must press a button to get in or to get out. And Irma tells him to come to the Alpine room for dinner at 7. And then once he's in the room, he sees a chopper pass by the window and he inspects everything. But quickly, he gets changed, wearing a kilt.
I love
it. He's quickly taken to dinner. And at the table is ladies everywhere.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Every woman there hasn't seen a man that hasn't worked at this institute in a long time. They show it. And every lady wants to look. There aren't a lot of names given around, especially because Irma Brunt says, no last names, none, because they don't want to expose too much information, and no discussing the clinic affairs. And Bond says, "Oh, I've never had much to do with the ladies." And quickly they get to dinner, and everyone's different, and everyone gets a different meal because they're eating what they were formerly allergic to, because that's what the institute does. It tries to heal allergies. And there is this one woman behind him as he's talking, and this attractive young woman takes her lips.
They're all attractive.
Yeah, well, okay. The attractive woman with her hair up. Is that better?
Okay.
Takes lipstick and goes ahead and just puts her hand down up the kilt and starts putting her room number on the side, as Irma won't allow him to visit the other rooms, and so otherwise he won't know. And we all know it won't last. And this leads to a moment where Bond is led along through this purple tunnel, through various labs to an office. And Balthazar Beauchamp, played by Telly Savalas, I think I said the name right, and he is there talking to Bond, saying, showing his earlobes and the hawk nose, and says how he knows that he's a part of the family and just needs Hillary to confirm it. And Bond says, well, I'll need to know some more, and explains everything's very special, curing allergies, and Bond tries to get him out of there, pretty much setting up, let's get out of the institute and we'll be able to go to like this church and figure everything out. The tombs, don't you want to visit your family's tombs? But Beauchamp, Blofeld, fights it. And that pretty much ends their encounter. I'm going to go ahead and take a moment because I've done a lot of talking, and I'll let you catch on up.
Again, the whole dreamy, trance-like quality of this movie, to me, it continues here halfway through almost, because this is such a Bond moment where he comes out all dressed up and he sees this room full of women, and it looks like it's one of every class, color, creed, whatever, all exotic dresses and everything. And of course, like to your point, they just don't know what to do because they haven't had a man in so long. And the allergy thing is interesting because as a kid, I'm like, yeah, people aren't allergic to food, and this is stupid. But when you get older, obviously you realize, oh no, certain things can trigger things that come on later on in your life, men, women, whatever, different things. And so it is interesting. It's certainly not, it's legitimate, but it's so subdued. And the good part about it too is when they're eating all the meals and they're all gaga over him, he goes on a full-on nerd mode and starts talking about all sorts of things having to do with genealogy, like he's never had an erection in his life, and these women are all sitting there all gaga and all that too. So the one girl's like, I know what he's allergic to. And it's like, I don't think he's swishy.
I'm sorry, I have to cut back in because I love how he's going in detail about his work.
He's selling it
That's
is the
not his
point.
work.
He's overdoing it, but he's selling it, and that's the whole gist of it. And to me, I think it's great because while they're at this beautiful dinner table and you see all these different meals and you can see the backdrop, I'm like, it's another nice little set piece for it too. Yeah, it's just it's cute, it's fun. Not a lot of guns, right? Not a lot of stuff going on, not a lot
No.
of whatever. Totally different vibe. But yes, when he goes and he meets Savalas, the one thing I will say is when I was a kid, I just remember the only bald person I ever knew of was Kojak, played by Telly Savalas. A lot of people loved that show, thought he was a man's man. He made bald sexy, all these kinds of things. That's lost on today's younger crowd of people. But I've never had a problem with Telly Savalas. I never had a problem here with Blofeld. This is where, as a kid, though, you start getting confused because, okay, we don't have the same Bond. Is this supposed to be the same Blofeld character? It's not played by Donald Pleasance. So the Bond films in general are fairly rewatchable to me. Some obviously more than others, and I don't mind the interpretations that what people bring to them. But Savalas, in his case here, he's not he's not going to be able to
Yeah.
outdo the way Blofeld's been played by other people. So he's doing it his own way. And he's very confident at delivery. So I have no problems with the way this exchange goes and everything too. It's supposed to be Bond selling what he's doing, being undercover.
So I did think about this while watching because obviously they look kind of different.
Yeah.
This one doesn't have the iconic scar that we remember. And it's not Donald Pleasance, obviously. But the thing is that on Her Majesty's Secret Service, he doesn't know Bond. Like, he doesn't recognize that's Bond. And it's a little confusing when you think about it, because clearly we've seen them interact before. Bond has this vendetta against Blofeld for a good reason, of course, but for a reason. So it's implied that they met before.
Yeah, it's tough when you really think hard about these things here too. So
I'm looking.
I'm not going to disagree with you about that at all, because yeah, you would think he would know, and we'll see whether or not that's a factor later on. But when you start thinking about plot with Bond, some of these things, that the editing and the continuity can be a little can be questionable. So I don't disagree with you at all there too. You're absolutely right.
So I'm looking it up because there was originally on Her Majesty's Secret Service supposed to be this twist that the Blofeld in this wasn't our Blofeld, but that didn't work out. And so they just cut that out. I took it as, when I was watching it, how I thought there was like a line of dialogue where he mentions that he has some family, like a cousin. So I thought it was supposed to be this family enterprise almost. And obviously we don't deal with Telly Savalas for too long. So I was thinking it could be that, but I guess not.
Well, they did want to have some continuity with some of the films, at least loosely. And obviously, we've been dealing with Blofeld for a while now, and I get it. But that being said, this is the part that I almost ignore the most, because I'm just interested in the character development and what's going on with it. And there's a lot of dialogue as these two are talking about ancestry and stuff, and it's their big meet going back and forth where he's asking him about the laboratories and how he runs his place, and it's like, well, with what we do here, we have very special needs for our clients, and it's certain vaccines must be prepared for special conditions, let's say. And I'm going, oh, that's got to do with the plot, because we know that him having this harem of women is going to be related to stuff. But vaccines which must be modified to suit each individual case. That's very telling. And again, this whole lowbrow way of doing it rather than over the top, I think's a strong suit. We don't see Blofeld very long here, because he's basically blowing Bond off, and Bond, is basically, well, I'm gonna need some more of your time to go over some stuff, and you can tell he's slightly almost annoyed. Soas was not the biggest, tallest guys. He might have been like 5'8", 5'9" tops, if I recall correctly. So but he carries himself with a certain kind of swagger with it too. So we got enough of him here early on. But the whole spy bit here really kind of takes off to me a little bit, because he's here and he's in his room. And again, you'd pointed out how he had searched his room looking for bugs and stuff, which you had to do back then. Now you really couldn't tell if there was one in there unless you had an electronic device. But he's checking out like the door frame, and you can see where it's electrified. And this is stupid, dumb spy stuff that it works for me. I like it. It's dopey. He's got the clamps, he's got the piece of metal, and he's got the book, and he's shorting out the device. Just stuff that you would need to know if you're a spy. And that's what's kind of cool. The average man doesn't have these abilities, or I should say training, I guess, too. I mean, he's not John Wick, for God's sakes, or anything else and all that. But let's not forget, he's got the room number he can take a look at. Is it room number 8, perhaps? He walks in and sees the one lady with the curly hair, and he starts giving her some sort of sweet talk in a really boyish way or whatever. And she's like, "You're funny pretending not to like girls." But it's at night and the fire's going, and she wants to be taken. And Bond is, how should we say, he's more than happy to oblige. I mean, we don't, of course, see it, but she starts talking about a story. And again, as a kid, I'm going, I don't care that you grew up on the farm with chickens and, how you came to be here at the clinic. And Bond's just kind of listening or whatever. But when you think about this coldly from the plot of what's going on, oh my God, here's another piece that is introduced, and not an over-the-top way, because all of them were allergic to whatever foods they were eating, and them eating it, showing they weren't allergic to more, means that something got developed. That alarm bells should be going off in today's world as far as how that can go. I thought that was kind of clever, and again, it was such a weird choice. But where this movie turns for me is where he's sitting there in the bed, and all of a sudden you get the psychedelic lights, and you get basically the subliminal programming going on by Savalas himself, Blofeld or whatever. I had no idea what the hell any of this was and how it would work. And again, mind control experiments from the United States government and super soldiers going back 100 years and stuff. It's all legit, real, documented. They actually put some of it here in a spy movie. And of course, MI5 in real life would have known about all this. I thought this was great. As a kid, this didn't work for me. I'm not going to lie. But as I've gotten older, I'm like, man, what a nice little way of modernizing something that was not really common in the public. I mean, you had the Manchurian Candidate and stuff, but he's trying to wake her up, and she's kind of in this altered state and just can't. And Bond's like, what the hell is going on? And he's not affected at all either. So I'm like, this is cool. This is subversive. This is really neat Bond stuff too. What was your take on this whole development?
I have to agree with you. Everything's set up. It really just adds to the story. We're not dealing with. We're done dealing with. I'm going to make all of your gold radioactive. And we're also avoiding big volcano bases. We are kind of getting this sense of realism from it, even though it's taken to an extreme, of course. But to condition all of these women to be what he needs them to be is really just... It sends like chills down you.
It's good. It's diabolical.
Yeah.
He leaves the room and he sleeps with another one too, but nothing happens there. I mean, that's really the only thing.
The best part of that, though, is that whenever he's done and he leaves the room, goes back to his room, and the lady is there waiting for him, or at least maybe he didn't actually go back to his room, just thought he did. The same lines. He uses the same exact lines, and it works on her just as easy. But it actually comes up. I'm pretty sure she says it. No words now. Later, and then they enjoy themselves.
That's funny. Really? Yeah. You don't say. Oh. Tell me some more about that. Boom. And then he sleeps with him. I mean, that's what it's like. That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up too, because again, going back to his kind of juvenile, boyish demeanor. I mean, Connery would have been able to pull that off, of course, in his own way. But here, this is where I think he shines his awkwardness and all that too. It's cool.
Yeah, no,
Anyway,
I love it. But from there, we see this blonde guy that was there earlier. There for Bond. He's kind of running point, as it were. And he is trying to go up the lift, but he's not allowed. He gets yelled at by one of the guys saying, "No, this is private, go." And so he does. And it cuts to the girls. It's morning. They're all playing curling or hurling, whatever it's called. Curling, yeah. As the blonde guy starts climbing. And Bond kind of blunders as the blonde guy is shot at and he goes down. But he's alive, and we see Blofeld there. And he says, hello to everyone. And once the guards call his attention to the blonde guy, he says basically, "You're not allowed to do this. Get out. Go. Take him down. And his stuff will be sent down later." And Bond will not be going down, even though he asks Blofeld afterwards, "Hey, can I go down to town?" But Blofeld isn't willing. It's time for the massages. So the ladies are going in, and a couple of them make some other appointments. We see Bond appear in Ruby's room. Yes, we got a name. And Rita will be waiting for him. But Bond is ambushed as he enters the room. And he stirs to see Blofeld there, calling him 007. And he knows pretty much everything. And he says that he has this bioweapon that he's ready to drop if his demands aren't met. And he's going to pretty much contact the government and say, "Hey, this is what's going to happen." So, and he explains how the girls are there for him to use, and Blofeld leads him to his new place, this little hole in the wall where he can look out the window and see his blonde friend, I can't remember his name, who's dead and hanging there. They killed him. And Bond is put away despite trying to fight. He looks around trying to think of a way out as he notices gears behind him. Gears to the lift. And I'm going to stop, let you catch up, maybe take over because there's a lot of action that comes up here.
Yeah, more plot stuff. I thought it was interesting. It looked like he had a holiday tree there. I don't know if you want to call that a Christmas tree, and there's some trippy stuff with there. And a part of me said, with the confusion that we talked about with whether or not he knew him or was aware of him, I just felt like that was the spider, letting the fly in, so to speak, because obviously it's like, yeah, I know all about you, Bond, and your mission and all that too. So it's just an understated way of how he can do it without getting all pissed off too. So again, Bond does follow that template of basically being a guy that gets caught. We've seen that happen in most of the movies, and obviously it's happened here too. So I don't feel like he's so over the top, Blofeld, that it's unbelievable, but I feel like he's still left to unleash the evil, as it were. Like, okay, what's his real thing here? Obviously, we know what it is, but while we're watching film, we're going, okay, he's on here just enough for us to see it, and that's it. And again, wow, I'm amazed that we're about 2/3 full of the movie, and it doesn't feel like we're getting through whatever. But he does kind of let him in on the big plot about what the virus is going to be, and the whole science fiction aspect to this is that some people would suggest that out of communist type ideals from 100+ years ago, when that theory was invented, roughly speaking, that population control was really what everybody's after. So therefore came the whole idea of climate change, which was before was climate science, which was the ice age and then it getting hot, and it's changed terms every whatever to make it not seem so whatever to the public. And so the whole idea of controlling population, especially after World War II, I've mentioned before, shows up a lot in horror films, science fiction things. Movies were based off of that, like Soylent Green and all that too. And it's an interesting idea about population control. That's what Blofeld's spelling out. Now, whether you believe any of that stuff or not, it's really irrelevant. But obviously, Blofeld does, and he's basically saying, "Hey, I've been training my own death angels for this Omega virus," which means the end. Alpha and Omega is the beginning, the end, for if you're in the biblical sense. So he's basically just telling that, yeah, I'm training these ladies. They're going to be my agents of death. So he's got this virus thing, and I'm basically I'm going to kill off a lot. And it's interesting because, like I say, if you just are watching this and you're younger and you don't know what's going on with it, like I was when I first saw it, I had no idea what the hell is going on here. But Savalas not losing his head and just being kind of matter of fact, like how he was on Kojak, it's a great way to deliver the plot. I think it's, to your point, it adds a little sense of believability, even though this is an over the top James Bond villain kind of scheme for a lot of it too. But we haven't had a lot of quips here other than we're getting ready to dispose of him. And he's like, a little therapy for your nature there. And then Bond tries to escape and can't. And I gotta say this. I'm not a smoker. Smoking's not really popular anymore like it was. Everybody smoked until about the 80s, 90s. But the way Savalas holds a cigarette this entire time is just pure genius. The way he's pointing it at Bond and all that, especially in the scene here where Bond's stuck with the gears and all that. I'm going, Savalas is fantastic in here. And some people hate Savalas in this movie, just like they hate Bond. I like them both. I really do.
Yeah, no, I don't get the hate.
Well, because maybe the idea is that if you're supposed to be menacing, the next Bond villain has to be even more menacing. And then one asks that, in other words, it's like you have to constantly be building a more devious and sinister Bond. Otherwise, it doesn't work. I don't necessarily agree with that, because this movie, again, we're 2/3 of the way through. It's really about the relationship of him and Tracy developing. And then we get this little side plot that involves a Bond villain, Blofeld, which we know is not just, how shall we say, it doesn't feel as important to the movie as other movies did, because this has got, like I say, a major relationship developing. Now, again, it's got some stupidity in here, like Bond being trapped in here instead of them just shooting him. I mean, honestly, it's completely dumb, and it just gives him an excuse to try to survive and get out. But it's cut up with some other scenes of the ladies and Blofeld, and basically moving what plot we do have forward or whatever, and giving them a chance to kind of climb a rope and stuff, which I'm meh about. That's my take on it. Let me pause here and let you catch up.
Yeah, I mean, well, I really like this the next bit here, where the girls are getting their gifts and they're setting it up, and Bond is climbing through and gets gloves and the cable car, and things start kind of building up. And after the girls are pretty much hypnotized, he's climbing once again, move quicker. And even though it's dangerous, Bond is just going at it. He's able to drop before this cable car is able to crush his fingers. He's able to avoid the guards moving slowly. And
it's a cool scene. I said it's a cool scene. I mean, this is where his athleticism pays off, and it's not a huge stunt per se, but it's it's perfect.
When he gets in and he hears the girls undergoing treatment, get the whole set and how everything is coming up. This whole makeup kit, as it were, is used to help him infect the world, as it were. And I also want to say this whole set is awesome.
It's the same round room that where they had the dinner and all that too, with the ladies eating and stuff. It's a great scene. You're right.
So we see Bond move along, goes down the elevator, and he doesn't get out. The front desk attendant looks to it, and he's a little weird, and he goes there. Another quick, poorly edited fight.
Quick edited. Yeah.
And quickly Bond stuffs him into a closet. And the girls are then going down the lift. And it's time for Bond to go ahead and show off his sportsmanship as if he hasn't already, and do a little skiing. So they go down the mountainside, and he's being shot at, but he's doing his best, able to avoid it. And Blofeld is actually down there on the field chasing Bond.
Yep.
Great. As Bond is skiing down towards the village.
It's not a Bond film unless you have skiing. And I love me some Moonraker, but even in Moonraker when they're in Rio, this one has the cable car stuff too. It's not the extended Jaws scene that we'll talk about later, but yeah, this is good stuff. You're in Switzerland, you got to ski.
And when they get, they hope to cut him off at one point, and he loses one of the skis. So he's on one ski as he's going down the mountain. It's great. And eventually he gets tripped up. And one of the men, he hits one of the men with his own ski that remains. And they get to the edge of the mountain. And it is a deadly way. And takes another hit. And with the ski, he chokes him out before he gets, well, thrown down the mountain after a brief struggle. And he handles another one, and they go down. He goes down to town. We see the girls on a bus. Irma is telling them, "Goodbye, girls, so long." And that's when Irma thinks she notices Bond down in town. And so she gets two men to the guards, and they're quickly after them. And there's a fight in the bell tower. It's great. But quickly he's walking away with a new coat, trying to blend in. But he's not able to for long. His luck is running out. And this guy in a bear costume kind of gets up in front of him, and these lights flash from, I guess, cameras. And it really shakes Bond up. He's a little surprised. But at one point, he eventually sits, and then he notices the nice pair of legs before seeing that she's there.
Who's she?
His woman, Tracy. And she is quickly saying, "Well, there, hello." And he is saying, "Do you have a car?" That's what he needs. And she's willing to help. She says, "Yeah, I've got a car. Come on." They drive out, and Bond hopes he hasn't been seen, but his hopes are not received. She reveals that she was there for him. She knew he was here and was waiting this entire time. He goes to make a call, goes in this telephone booth, and that's when Irma finally catches up. Shots are fired, and he quickly runs, gets down, gets in the car, and it's not a Bond movie. You said without skiing. It's not a Bond movie without a car chase. And I'm going to take a break here and let you go ahead.
This is an extended action scene, and based off of how slow and measured it's been up to now, it works. We don't have to do too much action, but when they start skiing, the fact that Blofeld leads his men out there, I love it. I really think that's great. Kind of wasn't expecting that, but I will say that the fall that he has off, and this is again late at night, almost going early morning, or I guess late at night actually. The fall off the cliff there down in the skis where they just watch him fall all the way down. That's a beautiful, underrated stunt. I enjoy it a lot. I mean, obviously Bond has been known to have some great stunts. That one is a real good one here too. But what I do like about Bond, and I think, this is also a template piece where you have these connected action pieces here where you have a fight, you have a chase, you have an undercover thing, you have a rest pause moment, then you have wind up for the big resolution, if you will. I think it's neat too because I love it when he's being chased and he's outnumbered and he has to blend into a crowd and stuff. And when he's sitting there in front of the ice skating rink and there's dozens of people all the way around and it's shoulder to shoulder packed, busy like you're at a theme park, and it's dark outside and he's hoping he can't be seen. You see the look on his face of like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. I'm getting caught here. Again, they're showing something local of the area that gives you a sense of flavor for it. People are looking around the crowd for him. He's probably going to get trapped. And of course, like you said, he sees a pair of legs, and the look Diana Rigg gives him is like, that's all you need to know. At that point, she's in love with him. And that's just the way it is, and you can feel it, and it's hard to pull that off without it being cheese, or oh my god, that's so stupid. It's really a delicate balance of doing all the stuff right too, because we hadn't seen her in a while, and when we haven't seen her, it's starting to feel more like a Bond film. But now she's here, we're realizing, okay, this isn't a Bond film. This is a film that has James Bond in it, the way I describe it. And she just smiles, and that's just the whole thing. Her heart is no longer stone. She's completely open. And the thing I didn't mention earlier about the whole romance was that you mentioned before about when Tracy was in the car with her father, and he's like, "Well, does James love you?" And she's like, "Well, in time that may come, can't rush it. Things will happen as they were." The whole idea is it should go at the woman's pace, and when she's ready to be in love, she'll be in love. And that's one of the little understated things about how these things work. You could have an arranged marriage, and you might be a good fit, but that doesn't mean you love each other. But you may learn to, or one person might be going at a different rate than the other. And that's the whole difficult nature of men and women getting together. And in this scene, the way she, like I say, Diana Rigg looks at him, it's beautiful. You can definitely see it. And of course, you have the fireworks going off, which is like celebrating the fact that they're together. And she's there to help him out because this is real and this means it. She's not just another woman that he sleeps with. He's laid a lot of wood in this movie so far, including her early on. So it's got nothing to do with that. She's competent. She's in love with James. She's everything she may not have been at the very beginning scene with what she did too. But it's very convenient that she's there, but she shows no fear. And that I think is neat. And obviously it kind of changes here a little bit when they get in the car and they start talking a little bit too. And, Bond, of course, is concerned for their life and everything. But I didn't have a problem with it. Some people might say it's a bit convenient. Of course, Irma, sees him when he stops and gets on the phone, takes a shot at him. So we have a little bit more of this action thing here too. But again, it's really a nonstop action sequence because they drive off. And like you said, it wouldn't be James Bond without a car chase. But what's cool here is the fact that the car chase here, the snow is like 4 or 5 feet high, and it's like a single lane for the most part in chunks of it. And it's cool to see geographically elements being used that are only predominant for it. And you know what? James isn't driving; she is. So I'm like, okay, I'm think this is pretty good. And it continues on to like a little derby race sort of thing, I guess, in another part of the small town that they're in. But I don't mind this action sequence. It's not, I don't know, it's not gadget, stupid car Bond stuff. I like that. But they conveniently escape and manage to get into a barn and all that. But let me pause so you can get up to this, because this is where it starts getting towards the end of the movie.
Yeah. There's a little rush. I believe a rush hour comment in there. But as I love when they get into the derby and there are gunshots and they're flipping over these smart cars basically. Yep. And finally they're thrown into the crowd and the car flips and Irma goes like "ah" as it blows up. And so once Tracy and Bond, the gas gets low, the snow's falling hard, and they get into the barn, they just have a moment where they're talking. They're together, as it were. And she asks about the job, and he is moving on, just wants to get some rest. But to think about her, really. He says how he's an agent, and how he can only think of himself, and yet he's finding himself thinking more and more about her. And she says she will have to keep going the way they are then. Like they are now, where he's running across the world, going through missions and stuff, and she's following. And he says no. He says he'll find something else. An agent may take all of him, but he loves her. and wants her to marry him. And she is overjoyed. She says yes. There's a moment where they're laying down, and he says, "Not before marriage." And so she's in the upper bunk, as it were, and it seems that they're going to sleep. But it's his New Year's resolution to wait for marriage. He knocks down the pillar, and she's rolled onto him, and he says, "To hell with New Year's." And that's the end of the night. Morning comes.
It's a great scene. No, I was just gonna say this is the scene of the movie for the most part. This is where you're going, wow, he's gonna get married.
Oh yeah.
And it works. He to me, this is one of his best bits in the movie because I feel she carries him through this whole movie. That's how good Diana Rigg is, and it's Sean Connery definitely could do it. It's hard for me to picture him though, based off of the body of work that he's had as James Bond, and that's not a compliment. It's not a critique. It's just an observation. I think him being kind of boyish and goofy that I've mentioned in here kind of works against him a little bit. Here it works because he opens up his soul to her, and she sees it, and they have a little bit of the soft light or whatever, and it's playful and everything. And he's realizing, I'm getting tired of this shit. I want to settle down. He's grown up. He's no longer living this boyhood, childish fantasy of globetrotting and bed women and risky kind of stuff. And he has a woman that is like him, which is all you can ever ask for in your relationship. But
just thinking about it,
it's the right time.
It's so against everything that we do follow with Bond, because a lot of Bond is the fantasy of it all.
It's very juvenile and it's very Peter Panish. It's the not growing up thing, and that's absolutely right. And that's where Bond, when it gets more absurd, is not really as fun. I think, especially as you get older, there's cool stuff about it, but it's supposed to be the fantasy. It's supposed to be all stuff that's not reality. And this movie does do a good job of trying to make it more of a human type story and everything else. That's where I think it works here. I agree with you on that. That makes it special.
So I'm going to go ahead and just continue with the scene, because morning comes and we see Blofeld skiers going down, and they find the barn. They go down there and they find the car that they were in, but there's no Mr. and soon to be Mrs. Bond. They are skiing right now, but Blofeld is hot on the trail. Blofeld's men, and they continue out. There's this snow plow that's moving, and it proves a danger whenever they're all like hopping across these little dips. And the one ends up getting knocked into the snow plow, and with all the snow that's blowing, guts is coming out. It's very, you don't expect that, but not
after an I love you.
No, but where do they go? Blofeld halts and launches something. There goes ahead, just shoots, and what does it cause? An avalanche. Faster. They have to be, or they will be swept into an icy, crushing death. But Tracy slips, and Bond gets her and asks her to hang on to him, but it doesn't go well. They get separated, and Tracy ends up lucky. She's on top, but Bond is nowhere to be seen, and Blofeld is satisfied. They get Tracy, take her back, and that's when we see Bond climbing out. And we quickly cut from there to go back to the office. The window, it's very cool. We see Bond looking out the window, and it shows the memory of her being dragged away. It's a very cool visual. I love it so much, and it's only there for a split second, but I can't stop thinking about it. But that's when M gets a call. The government says they're going to buy Blofeld off, giving him his amnesty like he wants. And Bond wants to destroy the Institute. He says, just go up there, rescue her, blow it to hell. M says, no. But Bond says, we owe the girl. And M's not hearing it. So Bond goes and he calls Draco, knowing that he can help. Do you want to take over?
Let's pause right here. First of all, the skiing scene's kind of cool, and I like a lot of the vista shots they have of them skiing down there. And of course, there's obviously some in studio ones that don't look good. That's you'll see that in a lot of Bond films, especially with skiing. But I will say that some of the scenes that have gotten performed are ones that will be performed in later Bond films, like here right before the wood chipper, where they're jumping over the there's such a steep mountainside there. They got the one cabin and they jump over. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right out of For Your Eyes Only. And a lot of hardcore Bond fans will recognize some of these scenes, but part of me is going, oh, they did this earlier, because now that we're going in order, I'm able to kind of go, well, this is the first time I've seen this stunt or that stunt or this driving maneuver or whatever. I'm like, okay, because remember, groups of people that worked on these Bond films worked on them a lot, not necessarily all of them, because it's gone over a long period of time, what, 50 plus years now. So, but groups and second director groups and those things would work on them. So there definitely is going to be familiarity with them in terms of the stunts and those scenes there too. What I did like here too is again, we see Bond being open and you see him no longer smiling, being goofy, and he's frustrated with what's going on. And it's a great way, basically, even though I've always felt does a great job of being the heavy, his service is to God and country, and he respects Bond a lot, and he wants to help him, I feel like. But again, it's where are your loyalties, and his loyalty is not necessarily to Bond. And this is what I like about Bond. He's going and doing the right thing. He's saying the department owes her a debt because he saved her life and all that, and he's just whatever. And M's not having any of it. So it's a great piece of friction. And the fact that they acquiesce to pay him off, I don't like him at all. But the fact that he goes to the man that can get things done, even if it's not on the up and up, so to speak, morally, ethically, whatever you call it, it's the right thing to do. Otherwise, Bond could just say, screw it. I mean, and some of the scenes that they have here, like this assault on the complex with the sun rising or whatever like that, just look great, because again, it's not CGI. You get the actual sunrise effect with the clouds and everything. This is pretty cool, and considering it's one of these gigantic end of a Bond film over the top action sequences, which we're pretty much always going to have, it's not bad in comparison. I usually am not crazy about them, especially when all the guns start shooting and all that. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. But it's visual, just them preparing for the raid and flying over there too. And of course, Tracy's there, so they got to be careful about it because he has to rescue her. But for the most part, the action scene, I like it. I don't hate it. Again, they're in that beautiful room. The set pieces are great here. It's very colorful. I'm not crazy about it, other than I love the fact that it's Draco and his people, so they're loyal to Bond, and so this feels personal. This feels like, hey, it's my family coming to get you. And the scenes again in the circular room where you can see out and everything, I just think are great. And Tracy's not sitting there like crying, oh, woe is me. She's not like some of the Bond sidekicks that we would start to see in Bond films, especially in the 70s. I like it a lot, but as soon as they see the helicopters coming, it's a beautiful shot of them approaching and all that. And it's coming. That's kind of badass to me, seeing them just approach from the outside there. Again, I don't really care much for all the action part to it. We know he's going to save her and all that too, so I don't have too much to say about this. What's your take on this whole action sequence?
I'll go ahead and say that I enjoy a lot of it. It's better than a bunch of ninjas coming down and just throwing people around. No, this feels far more believable. And when
it feels like an assault to me.
Yeah. And when you're seeing them go, I will disagree a little bit about loyal to Bond, though, because what they're really there for is her. Everything else, secondary, including Bond, because once they get her out of there, we see Draco say, well, set up, you have the explosive set up. There's 5 minutes. If he's not out, he's not out. It's as simple as that. And they pretty much start heading off. And it's so far, in fact, that Draco knocks out his own daughter before they toss her in and they're flying away. They quickly go to... It's Bond and Blofeld and the Institute. They're outside of it. It's blown to hell. But they get in these sleds, bobsleds, I think. But they're going down this carved path, and Bond is after him, trying to keep up. And there's shooting from both of them, and Blofeld tries to blind Bond with his brakes, and I really do love this chase scene.
This is a cool chase.
But doing that, he loses his gun and then goes to throw a grenade, but drops it. Blofeld is scrambling as he has the grenade down in his sled. But he gets it out and tosses it, and Bond gets to Blofeld, grabbing hold, and they're fighting. And Blofeld is at one point sitting like really upright. I don't think it's exactly standing, but because of how tall he is in that moment, he's taken by the neck by a tree. And Bond jumps as the sleds go on and they crash. And it would seem that Blofeld is out of the picture. And a dog comes up to Bond's side, and this is the ending. Do you mind if I go on, or do you want to take over?
Well, again, I like the fact that Blofeld pretty much wants to be a part of getting Bond rather than sitting back and letting all the dummies do it, right? It's a cool action sequence. Again, it would be one that you would see in For Your Eyes Only. And this time, instead of, you'd have tobogganing and skiing in that one, done just as well. It feels fast. That's that I do like that in here. I want to say that as far as a boss getting it, at least Blofeld was in it. And it's a weird choice, don't you think, of the grenade kind of not, and maybe it's just a tension thing where you're like, okay, I guess why would you show him doing him not getting it off in time or whatever? But the whole choice for him to kind of get caught in a tree, it's a cool stunt, but I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess it's better than something silly, you know. It's something that seems realistic, but it's, I don't feel bad about it. It's just different. I mean, it just seems like karma. Bond's busting his ass, but he's not doing a great job necessarily. He's not doing a bad job, but everything that can go right goes right for him, because a man who's in love, all of a sudden he's getting some breaks, including the rescue dog coming down and seeing him, and that's like, well, you gotta love it, you know. I mean, this is what you would see in Saturday morning cartoons. But yeah, you're like, okay, that's the end of the whole Blofeld thing, because that's really not the movie. But yeah, that's where everything transitions to the end. So go ahead and take it.
Lights as we go back to the city where we belong. There's a ring, a wedding, and a Mr. and Mrs. James Bond. We see Moneypenny a little broken up by it. And Draco and M, even though they aren't exactly on the same side, as it were, they're enjoying a drink and a conversation. And Q is talking to Bond, saying he did good, and says that if he ever needs anything, he's happy to help. And Bond takes a look at his wife and says, oh, no. I know the gadgets, and I know how to use it. We see Tracy with her father, and Draco is telling her that I want you to obey your husband. Just no, she says it. My bad. She says she'll obey Bond just like she did her dad. There's a laugh, and Moneypenny gets one last look from Bond before the well wishes are done, and they're in the car and off they go. And there's a comment by Tracy, and there's that iconic line, but darling, now we have all the time in the world. The music is playing, and they halt for a moment as Bond is getting off and talking about how with what they have back there, it's a little little much. He gets out and he's taking off the flowers, and that's when we see Irma and Blofeld. And Irma shoots, and Bond ducks, and he's ready to go after them, gets in the car, and he looks to Tracy and sees that she is shot. And he's saying no and takes her into his arm. And that's when a cop pulls up, and Bond looks at him and says, it's quite all right. She's just having a rest. And he keeps her in his arms. And There's no hurry because, as he says, they've got all the time in the world. And that is the end. Oh, God. I really love this movie.
It it's interesting how far we've kind of come with it because again, I feel like in the movies these two, not the whole Blofeld angle, it's just there to kind of make us feel like they've been a couple for a long period of time, even though they're it's a quick marriage, so to speak. But the wedding scene's beautiful because we don't see the ceremony; we just see it immediately after the ending. And Moneypenny, I think, is fabulous in this because she's really obviously affected and not jealous or anything. She's really happy, sad, whatever you want to call it. She's really emotional, and he looks at her and he tosses his hat to her. She catches it. I thought that's a nice touch. And it was a nice touch to see M and Draco, flip sides of a coin in a way, put aside what their natural rivalry would be because of something that's more important here, and it's James leaving. We see her seemingly to be happy, not unstable or anything. And the whole thing about, I'll obey, or when he's like, when you got to respect the bond, and let the man run the show or whatever. That's just old school. That's just how it goes, that the man runs the household. Somebody has to be in charge, otherwise,
Yeah.
Whatever. Now,
But the joke of how she'll
yeah,
listen to Bond just how she listened to her father.
yeah.
Oh,
But what's weird about this final scene here is there's no real music. It's quick and it's sudden. And the flowers as they're driving off that are everywhere are just gorgeous and all that too. When they pull off the side of the road, you really feel like they're married and they're on to the next phase of their life together. And you really feel like even though he's a spy, it's behind him. And you're like, well, what now? And I think a lot of people when they get married, that's, the happily ever after thing is, well, we've got there, now what? And they don't think about the now what. And that's when things really start happening. For Bonnie, he doesn't get that chance because Blofeld's in the car driving, and Norma's the one that does the little hit job, and and that's it. It's like I'd forgotten that Blofeld was still in here. I thought he was dead, but you clearly see him in there driving with her. That's something like I say, I just don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen this. And then, to your point, he comes and he sees her, and it's like, holy shit, she is dead. They really went there, and it's not played for yucks. You can only cash in these kind of checks so often in movies, and it's
but
it works.
when we're
It's
talking about
effective.
this, when we're talking about this movie, and there are future installments that deal with marriage as well, which we're not going to get into in this conversation. But this one, it feels so earned. Like we're going through it. We've had Bond be Bond for a ton of movies. And we get to this point. Sure, we changed the actors, but how we feel about Bond going forward as we're watching this movie, for me, it's so just damn beautiful how it comes to the end, how it comes to the wedding, and then that heartbreak at the end. You had to have tears in that theater. When you had people watching, you had to have some kind of mist in the eyes. I cannot imagine that people could be so cold-hearted towards this.
Well, people want a Bond film, so that they want a Bond film, and I think this is a film that has James Bond in it, and I think because it's as being a one-off, a lot of the elements of them trying to be more realistic as far as the action and how it was in the novel, some of the touches to the movies before, I think it does add up to an incredible film. And it's not popcorn in that you can watch it over and over again, like you might say Moonraker, which most people think is one of the worst Bond films, but I find it highly entertaining. That being said, I'm not going to say it's a good film, but there's things I really love about it. And if to be judged on that, we can say a lot about all the Bond films. I think this is not a James Bond film. This is a film that has a Diana Rigg is awesome in it. She carries it. She helps him out a lot. We see the growth in him. And whatever reasons happen for him not wanting to be a Bond for 7 films or wherever they want to sign him to, and things that happened afterwards, it's okay. And the fact that they cast him on, that's fine. We know that Bond will return, obviously, and not be played by George Lazenby. That being said, I respect the hell out of the fact that I thought he gave a very solid performance in here, and without Rick's contribution, I don't know how it would have turned out, but there's just something special about it, and it's because they actually made Bond human, and he has a sensitive side to him, and he's not a pussy, he's not whatever. It's you know, when you meet a certain someone in your life, whether they've got faults or not, if it's the right person for you, where you're at the same level that they are, that's pretty rare in life. You might meet a couple people that meet that, but the timing of it may not be perfect. We see the old way of fathers being involved in directing their legacies, which means their children, and how they get involved in here by Draco. And we see the conflict Bond has with his duty and his loyalty, because if you're a bachelor, you can do all these kinds of things, but sometimes people think, well, there should be something more, and the answer is love, but for how long, and who knows. And um, we can talk later, and obviously as we continue through the Bond series here, about when Bond gets recast as different people and what they try to do and how it works and how it doesn't, because it all goes back to the fact that we have all these films up to now to compare it to. And I'll finish off this movie by saying I love it. I think is one of the best Bond films, start to finish. Um, it's got a lot of the elements that I prefer and what I think make a better spy film, because ultimately a Bond to me is a spy film, and at worst it should be a fantasy with the occasional great action sequence and creative one, which again we'll continue to talk about, but not rely on them. And this relied on solid writing, great set pieces, everything that is just enjoyable to sit there and visually watch. It's a stunning film, and I definitely think it's one of the best out of all that we've seen. We'll rank them later, because Bond is going to come back, Sean Connery I should say, in one more film, Diamonds Are Forever, and then we'll maybe take a pause from there and kind of review them. But it's a great film. I try to find flaws with it, and there's a few, but again, it doesn't really diminish my enjoyment in watching this film. What are your final thoughts?
I really love this movie. Out of all the Bond films that we've seen thus far, I love Sean Connery in the role, of course, and I think I said before that Goldfinger is one of my favorites, and it really shows how the role is his, as it were. But there's just a level to this that, even though George Lazenby only stayed for it the one time, it's truly one of the most memorable performances that I think of. It's not somebody I forget. I cannot stress this enough. This movie is one of my favorites, if not my favorite, which I know some people won't agree, but I just really, even think about it now, I could watch it again.
If you watch Bond, or you're going to be Bond and be in a film, if it's one film, it's got to be a hit. I'm glad that this was a hit and not a miss, because definitely was a hit for me. I agree. I think it's definitely one of the best Bonds out of all of them. No questions asked. I think it's better than anything Daniel Craig did, right off the top of my head. And of course, well, we'll get into that later, just as far as where they stand there too. But yeah,
You mean James Bourne?
Yeah, James Bourne. There you go. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, there you have, ladies and gentlemen. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, James Bond, in our review in order. Take a look at the early ones that we did. Let us know what your thoughts and feelings are about this Bond film. Obviously, it's very personal. We spent a bit more time on this than we probably typically do. Usually it's about an hour. This is an hour and a half, but it's just so damn good to talk about. It's awesome, and looking forward to continuing our Bond series and Diamonds Are Forever next week. So for Professor Pixel and everyone involved here at the Xtreme Movie Show, I'm your host, Rom. Thanks for listening. As always, stay extreme. Good night.